Hi, I'm Xander and welcome to my channel. Before I start, I would like to pay my respects to the Wadawurrung people on whose lands I'm recording this today. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and to any other elders that might be watching this either now or in the future. This is, was, and always will be Aboriginal land. Sovereignty was never ceded. This is stolen land. That should be acknowledged. So, welcome to my channel. I am a poet and a songsmith, and my channel is about creativity, my creative process. The basic structure for my videos is I go over the creative process towards creating something, whether it be a poem or a song. I then perform that poem or song. I then go into more about the nuances of the structures, about why it came into being, what its purpose is, anything that needed to change, and how I might have crafted that particular song moving forward, if that's relevant for the song or poem. Today it's a song. It is a chant. The chant is, well, I basically call it Danu, and it's after the goddess Danu. And this particular chant was written with a purpose in mind. There was a particular ritual which was honoring the memory of a friend of mine who passed, who was very strong in one of the communities that I'm part of. And the community held a memorial, and I was asked to hold a particular role where I invoked a particular goddess. And I usually like to do that through song, so I wrote a song so that I could do that invocation. So this song came with the purpose first. And with that purpose in mind, I did a little bit of research into as much as I could find about who Danu was, the various aspects, epitaphs, names of Danu, where Danu fitted within the pantheon of things, but I also was considering where Danu fitted within the context of my friends' pantheon, my friends' beloved kin when it comes to spirit kin and including deity, to get an understanding of how I might be able to fit that into it as well, if I could, even if it was an undercurrent. So the way things happened with this particular song, as luck would, well, it's not exactly luck, as the events unfolded, an uncle of mine passed away, and I went to the funeral of my uncle, which was several hours journey from where I live. And it was in the car on the way back from that particular funeral that I found myself singing. And that's where the chant originated. When I was on the road, I was driving, my hands were occupied, and things just came through. Doing tasks of this nature, like the dishes, for example, sweeping floors, menial tasks with spreadsheets, even those sorts of things where I'm busy on one level but relatively free on another, can be intensely creative periods for me. And I find that quite often, if I need something to come through and I have something that I've been pondering, it's quite often when it will come through. So it came through while I was driving. I normally have music on when I drive. My car doesn't have a jack that you can plug an iPhone or something into, but I used to be able to plug my iPod. But it's just that with the upgrades and things, everything on my iPod got wiped and it wouldn't sync. So I suddenly found myself without a means to play music because my CD player's broke and my car has a CD player. So a long drive, what do you do? Well, you might talk to yourself. I don't usually use the radio. I'm not a radio person. And so I found myself singing. And that's where the chant originated. It came out while I was driving. I started singing, and the first part of the chant really started to manifest there, I just started singing Danu's name to start with. If I'm doing something and it's a devotional for a particular entity, singing their name is quite often where I start. They can get a lot from choosing to sing somebody's name in different ways. Sometimes I Gregorian chant it, basically just making it sound like an Gregorian chant, playing with the vowel sounds, elongating the vowel sounds, and just sort of going up and down on a scale. Excuse me. Sometimes I do that as a starting point, but in this case, I didn't. In this case, I just started singing the name because I was driving, I was concentrating on the road, and I found myself singing Danu, Danu, and various variations on that, kind of playing with that particular sound, trying to get a D sound with a TH in it. I'm not good with Irish. I'm going to use the phrase Irish rather than Gaelic term, primarily because I'm not used to speaking Irish Gaelic, which I know there is a specific word for. I'm not really good with names and things like that. So trying to concentrate on what I understood the sounds were going to be as I sang it, to try and soften the D, so it was more DH in the D and was a softer sound, trying to figure out how to say some of the other words, which I am probably not saying properly in the song, but my time was running out and I was fairly limited in what I was able to do within the space of time that I had. And moving forward, if I ever needed to sing the chant again, it would be good to focus on that aspect of it, because wherever possible, naturally, it is better if you're honoring a particular deity to make sure that you're pronouncing their names and their titles and their epitaphs as closely to their preference as possible, regardless of what language you happen to be using, considering their pantheon. So, Danu was the name. The chant basically was a listing of what I understood their epitaphs to be, or their epitaph might be the wrong word, but basically what I understood them to hold. So Danu was a goddess of primal water, an eternal mother goddess, and Danu birthed the Irish gods, the Dea Tuatha Danann. Sorry, very tired. Tuatha Danann. And so naturally that became part of the chant. And then, because it's an invocation chant, the second part of the chant then needed to work on that in order to get what I wanted to say as far as invoking, which basically was, come and join us and, working. We honor you, kind of thing, in some way, shape, or form. So they're the basic concepts that I had in my mind when I was singing, when I was trying to craft the song, when I was starting. And when I was driving, I found myself singing, Danu, primal water, Danu, eternal mother, Danu, Kubatha Tuate Dana. At first, it was just that line over and over and over again. While you're concentrating on other things, doing something like that in the background can be, well, I find it relatively easy, but at the same time, I can't let it get me out of a state where I'm concentrating on driving. So the majority of me is driving, but that means that the rest of me is just, I would just say, free to free to do, free to be, free to exist. And it just comes through as it comes through. So it wasn't until I got home and I decided I needed to record the chant because I couldn't record it while I was driving. And one of the reasons I was singing it a lot was to try and imprint it in my head so that I would remember it when I got out of the car. I stopped part way just for a necessity break. And when I got into the car, I tried to record it then very quickly. But I found at that particular time, because things had been disrupted, that I didn't have it right. I had got it wrong. And it came back while I was driving. And so it wasn't until I got home that I was able to record it in some semblance of what it was when I was singing it through in the car. And then, of course, adding the second layer, there needed to be some difference there. I felt it needed to build. And so I went a little higher. And so for the second part of it, it came along the lines of, Danu, hear our voices, Danu, come and join us, Danu, hold us dearly in your heart. And it wasn't until I was singing those two and trying to experiment with, do I do the first line, the second line, then the second line, and then the first line again? Do I do the first line, the second line, the first line, the second line? How can I layer it so that if this is something that is being done as a group thing, and the group isn't going to be participating in that, they're not going to be singing it, how can I get it so that it's going to fit the container that it's going to be sung in? And that's when keening started to come into things. I was interested in how I could layer it with keening. I kept going over in my mind a scene from was it Penny Dreadful, the TV series Penny Dreadful. Character, I can't remember her name. That was a very Irish name. She was a very Irish character. And she was talking about keening and the importance of keening in Ireland. And I wanted to get some aspect of keening in there. And so in the end, pretty close to time, but not fully close to time, it was a couple of days earlier, I put in an additional line to separate. So there were the two, and then this additional line would come in, and then I could repeat. And I could either reverse it or go in order, depending on where I was at the time. So the third line just goes, Danu, 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 Danu. The idea of that being something that could potentially sound like keening while saying Danu's name. And so the full song, to sing it all together, goes like this. Danu, primal water, Danu, eternal mother, Danu, Hubatha Tuate, Dana. Danu, hear our voices, Danu, come and join us, Danu, hold us dearly in your heart, Danu, 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 Danu. Danu. And of course, something that is invoked will need to be devoked. And I thought, well, I'll figure that out. On the day, I can either just do the first line and maybe the third line and skip the second line, or I could maybe with the second line do it past tense, but I hadn't really figured that out fully. I was still changing my mind about what needed to happen there, because with a group situation, there's always an aspect of flexibility. It doesn't always go to plan. I get stage fright when I'm in front of people. So I have to really find a way of not letting that impact. And one of the ways of doing that when you're in ritual space is to really focus on the purpose behind why you're singing, and which in this case is honoring the deity, singing to the deity. Everyone else disappears. It's me and the deity and what's necessary to hold this container, which is a container where we're honoring somebody who has passed, and emotions perhaps need to be held. And in the background, using motion to anchor that. So when I went to devoking, I just went with the first line, third line, and then moved on. Quite often in the way that we do ritual in this particular tradition that the ritual is part of, shorter and is better. Doing something that's tight and contained and ends well. So that was the song, and that's the reason that it was written, and that's kind of how it played out. And it's a lamentation song because it was written for a memorial. It's a lamentation song, but it's also a song of devotion. It's a song honoring a particular deity. So working in things that were of relevance to that deity was important. It was a song that needed to be sung in a circumstance where I was not necessarily going to be in a good frame of mind. One of the reasons I sing my songs when I in such situations is if I forget the words and have to ad lib, no one else is going to know. Essentially, it's one of the reasons I started doing my songs in ritual spaces. I can say what I need to say, and if I need to ad lib or if I need to work something else in there in the spur of the moment, I can allow that to happen, and it doesn't matter because no one else knows what the song is actually going to be like until I sing it anyway. So it's all good. I'm not sure there's anything else to say about Danu. I recorded it. It's on my Instagram. It will be on my blog at some point. It hasn't made it yet. It's too soon. But I will put it up there at some point, just in case me or somebody else that I know wants to use it again. And perhaps you might fit other contexts, but that's the context in which it was written. So thank you for listening, and farewell.